You really don't get it, do you, Victoria? Farah laughed, tossing the divorce papers across the mahogany table like they were trash. I'm doing you a favor. You're a Honda Civic living in a Ferrari world, and frankly, I'm tired of driving in the slow lane. He thought he had won. He thought she was just the quiet, boring housewife who clipped coupons and wore thrift store sweaters. He was already dreaming of his new life with his model girlfriend and his impending promotion to VP. But as Farah signed his name, sealing his fate, he missed the one detail that would ruin him. He didn't see the tiny diamond-encrusted pin on her lapel, the crest of the Sinclair family. He didn't know that the woman he was discarding wasn't just a housewife. She was the secret owner of the very empire he worked for. And the ink wasn't just signing a divorce, it was signing his death warrant. The air in the conference room on the 40th floor of the Hudson Yards building was stale, recycled, and smelled faintly of expensive leather and arrogance. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the New York City skyline shimmered in the grey afternoon light, a sprawling testament to power and money. Farah Reynolds adjusted his silk tie, catching his reflection in the glass. He looked good, 34 years old, a rising star at Omnicorp Global, and soon to be a free man. He turned back to the table, a smirk playing on his lips as he looked at the woman sitting opposite him. Victoria. She looked exactly as she had for the last 5 years of their marriage, unremarkable. She was wearing that beige cardigan he hated, the one that had pilled at the elbows, and her brown hair was pulled back in a messy, practical bun. No makeup, no jewelry, except for the simple gold band he had bought her when he was still an entry-level analyst. She looked small, swallowed up by the massive leather chair. "Are we done reading?" Farah asked, checking his Patek Philippe watch. It was a fake, a high-quality replica he'd bought in Canal Street to impress clients, but Victoria didn't know that. "I have a reservation at Le Bernardin at 7. I'd hate to be late." Victoria looked up. Her eyes were calm, unsettlingly so. "You're taking Chloe to Le Bernardin?" Farah didn't even flinch. "Yes. And frankly, Victoria, that's none of your business anymore. Once you signed these, I'm a single man. And you, well, you're free to go back to whatever small life you had before I rescued you." "Rescued me?" Victoria repeated softly. Her voice wasn't angry. It was flat. "Let's be real," Farah chuckled, leaning forward. "I pay the mortgage. I pay for the Tesla. I pay for the trips to Cabo that you spend reading books in the hotel room. You bring nothing to the table, Victoria. You have no ambition. You're content being a nobody. And I need a partner who matches my trajectory. Someone like Chloe." "Chloe," Victoria said, testing the name on her tongue. "The marketing intern. The junior executive of marketing," Farah corrected sharply. "She's vibrant. She networks. She fits the image of a future CEO's wife. You're an anchor, Victoria, and I'm cutting the rope." He slid the papers closer to her. The settlement was pitiful. He was keeping the house in Westchester, the car, and 90% of their savings. In exchange, he was offering her a lump sum of $50,000 to start over. It was insulting. It was predatory. "If you fight this," Farah added, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper, "I will bury you in legal fees. My lawyer is a shark. You can't afford him. You can't afford anything without me. Take the 50 grand, move back to Ohio, and find a nice mechanic to settle down with." Victoria looked at the papers. She looked at the check sitting on top of them. 50,000. To Farah, it was throwaway money. To the woman he thought she was, it was a lifeline. She picked up the pen. "You really think this is what you want, Farah?" she asked, her eyes locking onto his. For a second, just a split second, Farah felt a chill run down his spine. There was something in her gaze, a sharpness, a depth he hadn't seen in 5 years. It wasn't sadness, it was pity. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he sneered. "Sign it." Victoria didn't hesitate. She signed her name in a fluid, elegant script. Victoria J. Reynolds. "There," she said, capping the pen and setting it down gently. "You're free." Farah snatched the papers up immediately, scanning them to make sure she hadn't added any clauses. "Finally," he breathed out, the relief washing over him like a drug. "You have until the weekend to move your things out. I'm having the locks changed on Monday." "I won't need until the weekend," Victoria said, standing up. She picked up her worn canvas tote bag. "I'm leaving now." "Good," Farah said, already typing a text to Chloe. "Done. He's gone. Dinner tonight to celebrate." He didn't watch her leave. If he had, he might have noticed that she didn't walk toward the elevators for the general public. He might have noticed the nod of respect the security guard gave her as she passed. He might have noticed that outside, a blacked-out Rolls-Royce Phantom was idling at the curb, waiting not for a CEO, but for the woman in the beige cardigan. But Farah was too busy looking at his reflection again, admiring the man who had just shed his dead weight. 3 days later, Farah felt like a king. The house was quiet. Victoria had cleared out fast, leaving behind nothing but the furniture he had paid for. The silence felt like victory. He had immediately moved Chloe in. Chloe was everything Victoria wasn't. She was loud, demanding, and expensive. She spent the first morning redecorating the living room, ordering $15,000 worth of furniture from Restoration Hardware on Farah's credit card. "Babe, this beige is so depressing," Chloe chirped, scrolling through her iPad. "We need modern. We need chic. Oh, and I booked us a table at Nobu for Friday. You're paying, obviously." "Of course," Farah said, grinning as he sipped his espresso. He checked his bank account. The divorce lawyer fees had hit hard, and the settlement check to Victoria had drained his liquid cash. But it didn't matter. The quarterly bonuses were coming up at Omnicorp. Omnicorp was a titan in the global logistics and tech sector. Rumors had been swirling for weeks about a massive restructuring. The old CEO, a crusty geriatric named Mr. Henderson, was stepping down. The board was bringing in a representative from the majority shareholder family, the mysterious Sinclair Trust, to oversee the transition. Farah was confident. He was the top performer in the Northeast Division. He had just closed the deal with Amazon Logistics. The VP spot was his, and with the VP spot came a salary that would make Chloe's spending habits a non-issue. "I have to go into the office early," Farah told Chloe, grabbing his briefcase. "Big town hall meeting today. They're announcing the restructuring. Make sure you tell them you need a raise," Chloe said without looking up from her screen. "I saw this Cartier bracelet that would look amazing on me." "Consider it done," Farah said. He drove his Tesla Model S onto the highway, feeling the surge of acceleration. He turned up the music. Life was perfect. No more nagging about saving for retirement. No more quiet nights in watching documentaries. He was a power player now. When he arrived at Omnicorp headquarters, the atmosphere was electric. But it was also tense. People were whispering in the hallways. "Did you hear?" His colleague, Greg, hissed as they walked toward the elevators. "The Sinclair family is actually sending someone in person. They've been silent partners for 50 years. Nobody has ever seen them." "Probably some old guy in a wheelchair," Farah scoffed. "Doesn't matter. As long as they see the numbers I put up this quarter, I'm golden." "I don't know, man." Greg looked nervous. "Word is they're doing a full audit, reviewing everything. Expense accounts, client relations, HR complaints." Farah felt a slight twinge of anxiety. His expense account was liberal. He had expensed a few dinners with Chloe as client entertainment, but everyone did that. It was part of the game. "Relax," Farah said, clapping Greg on the shoulder. "Revenue cures all sins. I brought in $4 million last quarter. They aren't going to touch me." They gathered in the massive auditorium, hundreds of employees in suits, buzzing with anticipation. On the giant screen behind the stage, the Omnicorp logo rotated slowly. Farah took a seat in the third row, reserving the spot next to him for his jacket. He wanted a clear view of his future. The lights dimmed. Mr. Henderson, the outgoing CEO, walked onto the stage. He looked tired. "Ladies and gentlemen," Henderson began, his voice shaky, "it has been the honor of my life to lead Omnicorp. But the world is changing, and Omnicorp must change with it. As many of you know, the Sinclair family has held the majority stake in this company since its founding in 1925. Today, for the first time, the head of the Sinclair Trust has decided to take an active role in the leadership of this company." Farah leaned forward. This was it. "She has been observing us from a distance for some time," Henderson continued. "She knows this company inside and out. Please welcome the chairwoman of the board and acting CEO, Ms. Victoria Sinclair." Farah froze. Victoria? It was a common name. It had to be a coincidence. Then the curtain rose. The woman who walked onto the stage was not wearing a beige cardigan. She was wearing a tailored, sharp white power suit that probably cost more than Farah's car. Her hair was no longer in a messy bun. It cascaded in glossy, styled waves over her shoulders. She wore diamonds, real ones, glittering at her throat and ears. But the face. Farah stopped breathing. His heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. He blinked, rubbing his eyes, sure that he was hallucinating. It was her. It was Victoria. His Victoria. The woman he had kicked out of his house 3 days ago. The woman he had told to find a mechanic in Ohio. She walked to the podium with a grace and confidence he had never seen before. She didn't look small. She looked 10 feet tall. She commanded the room instantly. The silence in the auditorium was absolute. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," she said. Her voice was amplified by the speakers, clear, authoritative, and terrifyingly familiar. Farah felt the blood drain from his face. He gripped the armrests of his chair so hard his knuckles turned white. "No, this isn't possible. She's poor. She's nobody. I paid her $50,000. "For years," Victoria began, scanning the crowd. Her eyes seemed to sweep right over Farah without pausing, treating him as insignificant as a dust mote. "I have watched Omnicorp grow. I have watched it succeed. But I have also watched a culture of arrogance and complacency take root." She paused. The tension in the room was suffocating. "We have leaders who prioritize their own image over the company's integrity," Victoria said, her voice sharpening. "We have executives who treat their teams and their partners with disdain. That ends today." Farah felt like he was going to vomit. Sinclair. Her middle name on the marriage certificate was just Jane. Victoria J. Reynolds. Was the J for Jane, or was it a cover? Had she been hiding this the whole time? Why? Why would a billionaire heiress live in a 4-bedroom colonial in Westchester and drive a Honda Civic? Then it hit him. The business trips she took to visit her sick aunt in Vermont. She was gone for days at a time. She was probably attending board meetings. The way she never panicked about money when the market crashed. The way she spoke fluent French to the waiter that one time in Paris, which she claimed she learned in high school. She had been testing him. For 5 years, she had been testing him. She wanted to be loved for herself, not her money. And he had failed. He hadn't just failed. He had failed spectacularly, cruelly, and publicly. "I am initiating a complete audit of the executive branch," Victoria announced. "We will be trimming the fat. If you are here to build, you have a future. If you are here to take, your time is up." The applause was thunderous, fueled by fear and sycophancy. Farah couldn't clap. His hands were frozen. As the meeting ended and people began to file out, buzzing with shock, Farah remained seated. He couldn't move his legs. "Hey, Farah," Greg nudged him. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. That's the new boss. She's intense." "I know her," Farah whispered, his voice cracking. "What?" Greg laughed. "Yeah, right. The Sinclair heiress. In your dreams, buddy." "No." Farah stood up, his legs shaking. "I need to talk to her." "You can't just walk up to her," Greg warned. "Look at the security." Farah looked. Flanking the stage were 4 massive bodyguards. They looked like they ate concrete for breakfast. But Farah was desperate. He had to fix this. He had to tell her it was all a misunderstanding. He had to get her back. Not just for the money, though the realization of her wealth was making his head spin, but for his survival. If she was the CEO, he was dead. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring Greg's calls. He made his way toward the stage exit. "Victoria!" he shouted. The crowd quieted slightly. A few heads turned. "Victoria!" he yelled louder, desperation creeping into his tone. Victoria was just about to step off the stage stairs. She stopped. She turned slowly. Her eyes found him in the crowd. There was no warmth, no recognition of a shared life, no love. She looked at him, the way a CEO looks at a disgruntled former employee. She raised a hand, and one of the security guards stepped forward, blocking Farah's path. "Sir," the guard rumbled, his hand on Farah's chest. "Step back." "That's my wife," Farah shouted, causing a ripple of gasps to tear through the room. "Tell him, Victoria. Tell him I'm your husband." Victoria tilted her head slightly. She leaned into the microphone one last time. "My ex-husband," she corrected, her voice echoing through the hall. "And Mr. Reynolds, you're trespassing. Security. Please escort him out." "What?" Farah gasped. "I work here. I'm the senior director of logistics." Victoria smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile. "Not anymore," she said. "I accepted your resignation this morning." "I didn't resign. You signed the divorce settlement," Victoria said simply. Clause 14, subsection B. The spouse agrees to sever all ties, personal and professional, with any entity owned or operated by the Sinclair Trust. "You really should have read the fine print, Farah." The room went silent. Hundreds of eyes stared at Farah. The humiliation burned his skin like acid. "Escort him out," Victoria repeated. As the guards grabbed Farah's arms, dragging him backward out of the auditorium while he kicked and screamed, Victoria turned her back on him and walked away, her heels clicking rhythmically on the stage floor. Farah was thrown out the front doors of the Omnicorp building, landing on the cold concrete of the sidewalk. His access badge was ripped from his neck. He sat there, stunned, as the bustle of New York City moved around him. His phone buzzed. It was a text from Chloe. "Hey babe, I found this amazing villa in Tuscany for our honeymoon. It's only $20K a week. Book it?" Farah stared at the phone. Then he threw it into the gutter. Farah sat in his car in the parking garage of the Omnicorp building for an hour. He couldn't leave. Leaving meant accepting that it had really happened. He stared at the steering wheel of his Tesla. The leather felt cold under his sweating palms. Senior Director of Logistics. That title had been his identity. It was who he was. Without it, he was just a guy with a mortgage he couldn't afford and a girlfriend who expected a lifestyle he could no longer sustain. "Think, Farah. Think," he muttered, hitting the steering wheel. He grabbed his phone, screen cracked from where he'd thrown it, but still functional, and dialed his lawyer, Stan. Stan was expensive. Stan was supposed to be the best. "Stan, you have to fix this," Farah hissed the moment the line connected. "She tricked me. Victoria tricked me." "Farah." Stan's voice was clipped, impatient. "I'm in a meeting. What are you talking about?" "The divorce papers. There was a clause. Clause 14B. She fired me, Stan. She owns the company. Victoria is Victoria Sinclair." There was a long silence on the other end. Then, the sound of papers shuffling. "Sinclair?" Stan asked, his tone shifting from annoyance to shock. "As in the Sinclair Trust, the majority shareholders." "Yes. She hid her assets. Isn't that illegal? Fraud? We can sue her for half, right? If she's a billionaire, I'm entitled to half." "Farah," Stan said slowly. "Did you read the disclosure forms I sent you last week?" I skimmed them. You said it was a standard, no-fault divorce." "It was," Stan said, "but in the financial disclosures, she listed interest in Sinclair Trust. It was right there on page 40. You told me, specifically, that you didn't care about her little trust fund from her grandma and just wanted the house." Farah felt the blood drain from his face. He remembered. He had been so focused on getting Chloe to Le Bernardin that night. He had laughed at the thick stack of papers. "Just get me out of this marriage, Stan. I don't care about her pennies." "You signed a waiver, Farah," Stan continued, his voice dropping to a professional, detached coldness. "You waived your right to any future claims on her assets in exchange for the house and the car. And regarding Clause 14B, non-compete and conflict of interest clauses are standard in high-level executive divorces involving company ownership. If you signed it, it's ironclad." "But I didn't know she was the owner." "Ignorance of the contract you signed is not a legal defense," Stan said. "And frankly, Farah, if she's Victoria Sinclair, she has a legal team that costs more per hour than you make in a year. My advice? Don't poke the bear. You got the house. Be happy you got that." Click! Farah screamed, a guttural sound of pure rage, and slammed his fist into the dashboard. He drove home in a daze. When he pulled into the driveway of the Westchester Colonial, he saw a delivery truck pulling away. Boxes, dozens of boxes, stacked on the porch. He walked inside. The house smelled of expensive perfume and fresh flowers. Chloe was in the living room, directing 2 delivery men who were unboxing a massive cream-colored sectional sofa. "Babe, you're home early," Chloe squealed, running over to kiss him. She didn't notice his pale face or the sweat on his brow. "Look, the Restoration Hardware order came, and I ordered those silk drapes for the master bedroom. Oh, and I booked a private chef for Saturday night to celebrate your promotion." Farah looked at her. She was beautiful, yes, but suddenly her beauty looked expensive. Every inch of her, the hair extensions, the designer dress, the manicured nails, was a line item on a budget he no longer had. "Chloe," he rasped, "we need to talk." "Not now," she waved him off. "I need your credit card. The guys need a tip, and the florist is here with the orchids." "Stop!" Farah shouted. The room went silent. The delivery men froze. Chloe stared at him, her eyes narrowing. "Excuse me," she said, her voice icy. "Don't you dare yell at me." "Send the sofa back," Farah said, rubbing his temples. "Send it all back." "Are you insane? It's custom fabric." "I don't care," Farah snapped. I didn't get the promotion." Chloe's face fell. "What? But you said it was a done deal." "It's complicated," Farah lied. He couldn't tell her he was fired. Not yet. If she knew he was unemployed, she'd be gone before sunset. Politics. The new management wanted to bring in their own people. I decided to step back. I'm going to do some consulting. Be my own boss." Chloe looked him up and down, processing this. "Consulting? Does that pay better than VP?" "Eventually," Farah said quickly. "But for now, we have to be tight. No private chefs, no custom furniture." Chloe crossed her arms. The warmth evaporated from her eyes, replaced by a calculating look Farah had never seen directed at him before. "So," she said slowly, "you kicked out your wife, dragged me into this suburban nightmare house, and now you're telling me we're on a budget? It's temporary, Chloe. I just need you to support me." "I didn't sign up for temporary," Chloe scoffed. She picked up her purse. "I'm going to stay at my sister's tonight. The smell of this new leather is giving me a headache." "Chloe, wait!" But she was already out the door. Farah stood alone in the living room, surrounded by unfinished furniture and the echoing silence of his own making. Then, his phone pinged, a notification from his banking app. Transaction declined. Neiman Marcus, $4,500. He checked the balance. Available balance $1,200. The severance? There was no severance because he technically resigned per the contract. The savings? He had used most of it to pay off the mortgage on the house to ensure Victoria couldn't claim it, a move he now realized was idiotic because property taxes were due next month. He sank onto the floor. He had a house he couldn't afford to heat, a car he couldn't afford to charge, a girlfriend who was already 1 foot out the door. And somewhere in Manhattan, in a penthouse he could only dream of, Victoria was laughing. He needed to fix this. He needed money, and there was only one person who had enough of it to save him. Desperation is a powerful motivator. It can make a man swallow his pride, or it can make him delusional. For Farah, it was both. He spent the next 2 days stalking Victoria online. It wasn't hard. Now that she had revealed herself, Victoria Sinclair was trending everywhere. Business Insider, The Sleeping Giant wakes. Victoria Sinclair takes helm at Omnicorp. Vogue, The Billionaire Next Door. How Victoria Sinclair hid in plain sight. He clicked on the Vogue article. There were photos of her. Not the Victoria he knew. This woman was radiant. She was pictured at a charity gala in Paris, wearing a dress that looked like it was woven from starlight. She was pictured on a yacht in the Mediterranean. He read the article, his stomach churning. "I wanted to know what life was like without the filter of wealth," Victoria told the interviewer. "I wanted to see if I could be loved for who I was, not what I could buy. It was an educational experiment." An experiment. He was a lab rat, and he had failed the maze. But then he saw it. The mention of the Sinclair Winter Gala. It was happening this Saturday night at the Plaza Hotel. It was the social event of the season. Tickets were $10,000 a plate, invite only. Farah looked at his closet. He still had his tuxedo. He still looked the part of a successful executive. If he could just get in front of her, away from the corporate setting, away from the lawyers. If he could just remind her of the good times. The first year of their marriage wasn't bad, was it? They had laughed. They had been intimate. Surely, she still had feelings for him. You don't live with someone for 5 years and feel nothing. He formulated a plan. He couldn't buy a ticket. But he knew the catering manager at the plaza, an old drinking buddy named Mike. On Saturday night, Farah stood outside the service entrance of the plaza. It was freezing, snow swirling in the bitter wind. "Come on, Mike," Farah pleaded into his phone. "Just let me in the back. I'll owe you one." "Farah, man, security is tight," Mike whispered. "The Secret Service is here because the Vice President is a guest. If I get caught sneaking you in, I'm fired. I just need 5 minutes with my wife, Mike. Please, it's a romantic surprise. We're trying to reconcile." A lie. But Mike was a romantic. Fine. Kitchen entrance, 3 minutes. Wear a server's jacket until you get to the ballroom. Farah got in. He discarded the white server's jacket in a hallway and straightened his tuxedo. He took a deep breath, checked his reflection in a brass mirror, and stepped into the ballroom. It was another world. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars hung from the gold-leafed ceiling. The room smelled of orchids, truffle oil, and old money. A string quartet was playing softly in the corner. The guests were the elite of New York, senators, tech moguls, celebrities. And there, in the center of the room, was Victoria. She was wearing a deep emerald gown that hugged her figure, with a slit that showed off legs he hadn't appreciated enough. She was laughing, holding a champagne flute, surrounded by a circle of admirers. Next to her stood a man, tall, broad-shouldered, with salt and pepper hair and a jawline that looked carved from granite. He was looking at Victoria with a mixture of respect and adoration. Farah felt a surge of jealousy so hot it almost blinded him. He marched forward. He grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter to blend in and downed it in one gulp. Liquid courage. "Victoria," he said, stepping into the circle. The conversation died. The man next to Victoria looked at Farah with mild amusement, as if he were a court jester who had wandered into the wrong room. Victoria turned. Her smile didn't fade, but it changed. It became a razor blade. "Farah," she said, "I didn't see your name on the guest list." "We need to talk," Farah said, trying to project confidence but sounding shrill. "Privately." "I have nothing to say to you," Victoria replied calmly. "And I'm in the middle of a conversation with the senator." "The senator can wait," Farah snapped. The man next to Victoria raised an eyebrow. "I'm your husband. You can't just discard me like I'm nothing." "Ex-husband," Victoria corrected. "And actually, Farah, I can. That's what divorce is." "You defrauded me," Farah hissed, stepping closer. The circle of people widened, sensing a scene. "You lied about who you were. You pretended to be poor. That's entrapment." Victoria laughed. It was a genuine, amused laugh. "Entrapment? Farah, I didn't force you to marry me. And I certainly didn't force you to cheat on me with your secretary, or spend our savings on a car we didn't need, or treat me like a maid in my own home." She took a step toward him, and for the first time, Farah realized how intimidating she was. "I didn't hide my money to trick you," she said, her voice low but carrying across the silent room. "I hid it to protect myself from people like you. People who view marriage as a transaction. I wanted a partner, Farah. You wanted a stepping stone." "I loved you," Farah lied. "You loved the idea of having someone to control," she countered. "You loved feeling superior. You loved telling me I was lucky you married me. Tell me, Farah, do you feel superior now?" Farah looked around. The room was staring, a sea of pity and disgust. I made mistakes," Farah stammered, pivoting to the victim role. "But you have billions, and you left me with nothing? Is that fair? You have a heart of ice, Victoria." "I left you with the house," Victoria said, "and the car, and your freedom. That's more than you deserve." She turned to the man next to her. "Ethan, would you mind?" Ethan stepped forward. He towered over Farah. "I think it's time you left, Mr. Reynolds," Ethan said. His voice was deep and dangerous. "Who are you?" Farah sneered, trying to regain some ground. "Her new boy toy?" Ethan smiled. "I'm the head of Sinclair Security, and also Victoria's fiancé." Farah's jaw dropped. "Fiancé? We've been divorced for 4 days." "We've been friends since childhood," Victoria said, slipping her arm through Ethan's. "He waited for me. He waited while I played house with you, hoping you'd become a good man. He warned me you wouldn't." He was right. "Security," Ethan called out, not raising his voice, but the command was instant. 2 large men in suits materialized from the crowd. "Get off me!" Farah shouted as they grabbed him. "Victoria, you owe me! I gave you the best years of my life." "You gave me a tax write-off," Victoria said coldly, turning her back on him. "Goodbye, Farah." As he was dragged out of the ballroom, kicking and screaming, Farah saw the guests laughing. He saw Chloe's favorite influencer filming him on her phone. He was thrown out onto Fifth Avenue, landing in a slush puddle. His tuxedo was ruined. His dignity was gone. But the worst part was yet to come. As he lay in the wet snow, his phone buzzed. It was a notification from the security system at his house in Westchester. Motion detected. Living room. Motion detected. Master bedroom. He opened the app and watched the live feed. It wasn't burglars. It was Chloe. She was there with 2 large men he didn't recognize. They were stripping the house, the TV, the sound system, even the silverware. Farah watched on the tiny screen as Chloe looked directly into the security camera, flipped him the bird, and walked out the door with his golf clubs. He was truly, completely alone. And he was beginning to realize that Rock Bottom had a basement. The house in Westchester was a shell. When Farah finally got back from the city, shivering in his ruined tuxedo and soaking wet socks, the front door was wide open. The wind howled through the hallway. Chloe hadn't just taken the furniture, she had taken the light bulbs. She had taken the batteries out of the smoke detectors. She had taken the curtains. The only thing left was a single folding chair in the kitchen and a pile of overdue bills on the counter. Farah sat on the floor, the cold seeping into his bones. He checked his bank account again. $800. That was it. His next mortgage payment was $4,200. The property taxes were $12,000. He was drowning. For the next 2 weeks, Farah tried to claw his way back. He updated his LinkedIn profile, removing the senior director title and replacing it with strategic logistics consultant. He applied to every competitor of Omnicorp: FedEx, UPS, DHL, even smaller regional carriers. The result was always the same: silence. Or worse, a polite rejection email that came within minutes, suggesting he had been flagged in some database. Finally, he got a bite. A mid-sized trucking company in New Jersey called him for an interview. Farah put on his one remaining suit, a cheap spare he found in the back of the closet, and drove the Tesla, which was screaming low battery warnings to the interview. The hiring manager, a gruff man named Frank, looked at Farah's resume and then at Farah. "You worked at Omni for 10 years, Frank said, chewing on a toothpick. "Says here you were a director." "Yes," Farah smiled, turning on the charm. "I led the Northeast expansion. I increased efficiency by 15%. "Uh-huh," Frank said. He spun a piece of paper across the desk. "So why did I get this memo from the Omnicorp legal department this morning?" Farah froze. He picked up the paper. It was a cease and desist notification regarding proprietary trade secrets, sent to every logistics company in the tri-state area. It listed Farah Reynolds as a high-risk individual, pending an internal investigation into financial irregularities. "They're blackballing me," Farah whispered. "Look, pal," Frank said, standing up. "I don't know who you pissed off, but the name Sinclair is on this letterhead. We do business with them. I can't touch you. Get out." Farah walked out to his car. He slammed his hands on the hood. "She can't do this," he screamed at the empty parking lot. "She can't starve me." He sat in the car, hyperventilating. He had no job, no prospects. And now he knew Victoria was actively hunting him. But then a thought occurred to him. A dark, twisting thought. If he couldn't beat her in the boardroom, he would destroy her in the court of public opinion. The world loved a billionaire hate story. The world loved to see the rich endure a scandal. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had saved years ago. Barry the Bulldog Higgins. Barry was a sleazy investigative journalist who ran a podcast called Corporate Crimes. He had millions of listeners who thrived on conspiracy theories and eating the rich. "Barry," Farah said, his voice trembling with manic energy. "It's Farah Reynolds. I have a story for you, a story about Victoria Sinclair, the real Victoria Sinclair." "I'm listening," Barry's raspy voice came through the speaker. "She's unstable," Farah lied, the story forming rapidly in his mind. "She hid her identity to entrap me. She mentally abused me for 5 years, and when I tried to leave her, she used her trillions to destroy my career and bankrupt me. It's a David and Goliath story, Barry, and I'm David." "Juicy," Barry chuckled. "Can you prove any of it?" "I can prove she hid her identity," Farah said. The rest is my testimony. I'll cry on camera if you want. I'll ruin her reputation. Omnicorp stock will tank." "Meet me at the studio in Brooklyn tomorrow at 9 a.m., Barry said. "We're going to make you a star, Farah." Farah hung up. A sinister smile spread across his face. "You want a war, Victoria?" he whispered. "I'll burn the whole kingdom down." The studio of Corporate Crimes was located in the basement of a repurposed textile factory in Bushwick. It smelled of damp concrete, stale energy drinks, and desperation. For Farah Reynolds, it was the perfect stage. He didn't want the polished gleam of a mainstream newsroom. He wanted the gritty, underground aesthetic of a whistleblower fighting the establishment. He sat in the green room, which was just a closet with a flickering fluorescent light, checking his appearance in a cracked mirror. He had deliberately skipped shaving for 2 days. He wore a slightly wrinkled button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up, top button undone. He looked tired. He looked beaten. He looked exactly like a man who had been crushed by the boot of a $1 trillion empire. "You ready, kid?" Barry the Bulldog. Higgins leaned against the doorframe. Barry was a heavy-set man with a face made for radio and a voice like a cement mixer. He thrived on controversy. He didn't care about truth, he cared about clicks, and Farah had promised him the biggest clickbait of the decade. "I'm ready," Farah said, standing up. He felt a surge of adrenaline that masked the terror gnawing at his gut. This was his last roll of the dice. If this didn't work, he was destitute. But if it did work, if he could turn the mob against Victoria, she would pay him $10 million just to make it stop. "Remember," Barry grunted as they walked toward the soundproof glass of the recording booth. "Don't hold back. If she has a skeleton in her closet, drag it out. If she kicked a puppy once, tell me she runs a puppy mill. The internet loves a victim, but they love hating a billionaire even more." Farah nodded, swallowing hard. "I'll give you everything." They sat across from each other at the metal desk. The on-air light glowed a menacing red. "Welcome back to Corporate Crimes," Barry growled into the microphone, his voice instantly shifting into his broadcasting persona, aggressive, conspiratorial, and loud. "We live in a world where money doesn't just talk, it screams. It silences the little guy. It crushes the working man. But today the little guy screams back." Barry pointed a thick finger at Farah. "I'm sitting here with Farah Reynolds. Until last week, he was a respected executive. Today he's unemployed, blacklisted, and nearly homeless. Why? Because he made the mistake of asking for a divorce from the wrong woman. Farah, tell the people who your wife really is." Farah leaned into the mic, letting his voice tremble just enough to sound broken. "Her name is Victoria Sinclair, Farah whispered. He watched the live view count on the monitor to his left. It jumped from 12,000 to 85,000 in 10 seconds. Sinclair? Barry feigned shock. As in the Sinclair Trust, the shipping magnates, the people who own half the logistics routes in the hemisphere. The same, Farah said, wiping a fake tear from his eye. But I didn't know that. For 5 years, she lied to me. She pretended to be a struggling housewife. She let me work 80-hour weeks, let me stress about mortgage payments, let me burn myself out trying to provide for her, while she sat on a throne of gold she never told me about. Why? Barry pressed. Why would she do that? Control, Farah said, hitting the narrative he had rehearsed all night. It was a sick game to her. She wanted to see if I would stay with a nobody. And when I finally couldn't take the emotional distance anymore, when I asked to leave, she flipped the switch. She revealed who she was, fired me from my job, froze my assets, and blackballed me from the industry. She used her trillions to squash me like a bug, because I dared to stop loving her. The chat room on the side of the monitor was moving so fast it was a blur. User fight the power. This is disgusting. Boycott Omni Victoria sucks. Imagine having that much money and still destroying your husband. Evil. Justice for Farah. We stand with you, man. She starved you out, Barry said, shaking his head in mock disgust. A classic billionaire power trip. I have $80 to my name, Farah lied. I'm sleeping in my car tonight. I don't know what to do. I'm up against a god, Barry. How do you fight a god? You don't, Barry said, looking into the camera lens. We do. The people do. The viewer count hit 2.5 million. It was viral. It was global. Farah felt a twisted sense of triumph. He was winning. He could practically see the settlement check being written. Victoria wouldn't want this PR nightmare. She would call him within the hour. Is there anything else? Barry asked, sensing the momentum. Anything the public needs to know about how she operates? Farah decided to go for the kill. She's not just cruel, Farah said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. She's corrupt. You think Omnicorp makes that much profit legally? I was the director of logistics. I saw things. Doctored manifests, off-book accounts. She's running a dirty shop, and she fired me because I wouldn't play ball. It was a lie. A massive, slanderous lie. But once it was out there, the damage was done. Barry's eyes widened. This was the scoop of a lifetime. You're saying Victoria Sinclair is committing corporate fraud? I'm saying, boom. The heavy steel door of the studio didn't just open, it was rammed off its hinges. Farah jumped so hard his chair tipped over, sending him crashing to the floor. Barry dropped his coffee mug, shattering it. FBI! Nobody move! The shout was deafening. 6 agents in tactical gear poured into the small room, their weapons drawn and leveled at Farah. Behind them, 2 NYPD officers stood guard at the exit. Hands! Show me your hands! The lead agent screamed. Don't shoot! Farah shrieked, scrambling backward on the floor until his back hit the soundproofing foam. I'm a journalist. I'm a guest. This is a live broadcast. Farah Reynolds, you are under arrest, the agent barked, moving in with practiced efficiency. He hauled Farah up by his collar and slammed him face first against the desk. For what? Farah screamed, his face pressed against the cold metal, right next to the microphone which was still live. She sent you, didn't she? This is harassment. I'm exposing her crimes. You have the right to remain silent, the agent recited, snapping the cuffs on Farah's wrists so tight they pinched the skin. We advise you to use it. This is proof, Farah yelled at the camera, realizing the red light was still on. Look, She's silencing me. The world is watching. Suddenly, the monitor flickered. The corporate crimes logo, with its jagged red font, glitched and dissolved. The screen went black for a heartbeat. Then it illuminated with a crisp, high-definition feed. It wasn't the studio. It was a boardroom. Victoria sat at the head of a long glass table. She looked impeccable. Not a hair out of place, her expression serene and terrifyingly cold. Behind her stood Ethan, her head of security, looking like a sentinel. "Good morning," Victoria said. Her voice didn't boom. It cut through the chaos like a scalpel. It was broadcast over the studio speakers and out to the 2.5 million people watching the stream. Barry, who had been cowering in the corner, looked up at the monitor. The FBI agents paused, holding Farah in place. "I hate to interrupt such a creative storytelling session," Victoria said, her eyes locking onto the camera lens as if she were staring directly into Farah's soul. "Mr. Reynolds has a vivid imagination, but at Omnicorp, we prefer hard evidence." "You're framing me," Farah screamed, struggling against the agents. "Turn it off. Don't listen to her." "Gag him," the lead agent ordered quietly. One of the officers placed a hand firmly over Farah's mouth, muffling his screams into pathetic whimpers. "Mr. Reynolds claims I fired him for personal reasons," Victoria continued, tapping a tablet on the table. "He claims poverty. He claims innocence. Let's look at the facts." The split screen on the live stream changed. On the left was Victoria. On the right, a series of complex banking documents appeared. "This is an internal audit of the Northeast Logistics Division," Victoria narrated. "Over the last 3 years, Mr. Reynolds approved over 200 invoices for a company called Apex Consulting Solutions. He signed off on fuel surcharges, expedited shipping fees, and consulting retainers totaling $2.4 million. The documents zoomed in. The signatures were Farah's. "Apex Consulting Solutions provided no services," Victoria said, "because Apex Consulting Solutions doesn't have any trucks or consultants. It has one employee." The document on screen shifted to a corporate registration form filed in the Cayman Islands. "The sole proprietor of Apex is Ms. Chloe Madison," Victoria revealed, "Mr. Reynolds' mistress." A collective gasp seemed to echo through the internet. The chat room, which had been hailing Farah as a hero moments ago, froze. Then the emails appeared. Victoria displayed screenshots of emails sent from Farah's work account to his private Gmail, and then to Chloe. Date, October 14th. From dreynoldsomnicorp.com. Subject, easy money. Body, I just approved the winter surcharge. That's another $50K for us. Nobody checks the line items, babe. Buying you that bracelet tomorrow. I'm a genius. I'm a genius. Victoria repeated the words from the email, her voice dripping with dry amusement. You are stealing from the company you claimed to build, Farah. You weren't a victim of my wealth. You were a parasite on it. The chat room exploded again, but the tide had turned violently. User 123, holy sat. He stole 2.4 million? Scam alert. He's not a victim, he's a crook. Bye-bye. Farah, lock him up. Team Victoria. She brought the receipts, literally. The FBI has been building this case for months, Victoria said, leaning back in her chair. I didn't fire you because you wanted a divorce, Farah. I fired you because you are a thief. The divorce was just convenient timing. She paused, allowing the weight of the revelation to sink in. Farah stopped struggling. His body went limp in the agent's grip. He stared at the screen, seeing his own email, his own arrogance, broadcast to millions of people. He had signed his own death warrant with every keystroke. Oh, and Farah, Victoria added, her voice softening into something almost pitying. You mentioned insider trading and corruption earlier in this broadcast. That's an additional charge of libel. My lawyers will be adding it to the pile. She signaled to someone off camera. Take him away, Victoria commanded. The feed cut to black, replaced by the Omnicorp logo and the slogan, "Integrity above all." In the studio, the silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of handcuffs clicking. "You played me," Barry whispered, staring at Farah with pure venom. "You used my show to lie to the feds." I didn't," Farah stammered, his voice barely audible. "Get him out of here," the lead agent said, hauling Farah toward the door. They dragged him up the concrete stairs, out of the basement, and into the harsh light of the Brooklyn afternoon. A crowd had gathered. Not fans, but onlookers drawn by the police lights. As they shoved Farah into the back of the armored SUV, he caught a glimpse of a young woman in the crowd holding up her phone, live-streaming his arrest. She was wearing an Omnicorp hoodie. "Smile, Farah," she shouted. "You're finally famous." The door slammed shut, sealing him inside the cage. The tint on the windows was dark, but not dark enough to hide the reality of his future. He had wanted the world to know his name. Now they did. He was Farah Reynolds, the man who tried to con a billionaire and lost everything. He leaned his head against the cold metal mesh and closed his eyes, but all he could see was Victoria's face on that screen. Calm, victorious, and utterly unreachable. The game was over, and he hadn't just lost, he had been obliterated. And that is the story of how one man's arrogance cost him everything, and how the boring housewife he underestimated turned out to be the most powerful woman in the room. What do you guys think? Did Farah deserve that 8-year sentence, or was Victoria too harsh? Personally, I think he got exactly what he ordered, a side of hard karma. If you enjoyed this story of revenge and justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss a new story. And comment the word "boss" down below if you think Victoria is an absolute queen. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.